In question 9 of the week 7 workbook pages, I asked you to write the process for finding the annual carbon emissions in metric tons per year given two separate inputs. Let's go take a look at that so that we can come up with the formula on our own for these three boxes. So if we pop back over to this worksheet, you can see that the general process was miles traveled, divide by fuel efficiency, times 8,700, and then divide by 1,000,000. And that came out of these examples where we took their annual miles divided by their car fuel efficiency, times 8,700 grams per gallon, and then we end up dividing by 1,000,000 to convert grams to metric tons. So that's it. You need to click over here and say equals, and then the miles traveled is in A13 divided by the fuel efficiency for Tammy is in A9 times 8,700 does not need to be a cell reference, and divide by 1,000,000. Just make sure you have 6 zeros there. I don't use scientific notation in here. And sure enough, when I hit enter, I get 1.45, which is the same thing I got for Tammy's carbon footprint when we were working this out. Okay, so here I can just repeat the process, or I can click here and hover in the corner until I get this plus, and then pull it over. And we can see that these are the same values that we got earlier. So even though the miles per year were a tiny bit off, it wasn't enough to change the annual carbon footprint. It was just 4,004 compared to 4,000. So that takes care of step 5. In question 13, I asked you to write the process for finding emissions in grams per mile given the vehicle's fuel efficiency. So 8,700 divided by fuel efficiency equals grams per mile. That's pretty easy. Equals 8,700 divided by A9, the fuel efficiency. And sure enough, these should match the values that we got earlier. And I have this set to not keep decimals, so it's just a whole number. That's great. So now you are ready to go to the week 7 computer lab questions in Moodle and use this calculator. And remember that when you're doing those problems, you can just go in here and change this to say 300. What will be impacted? Will all of these change if I change that to 300? No, only the top two. The third one depends only on the car's fuel efficiency. If I change this to 49 miles to the gallon, then these two would change and this wouldn't change. I'm going to change those back to the given inputs, but again, you can use these to compare. What if Tammy and Ben both drive 100 miles a week? Then their annual miles are the same, but their carbon footprint will still be different. So this should be a quick comparison tool. Let's go to the cost of driving. If you drive, you know about how much it will cost to fill up your tank with gas, unless it's too expensive and you just put in $20. But in this tab, we will work out the cost of gas for a single trip based on a few inputs. So we're going to add a new sheet, and I'm a little bit crowded here. So here is my new sheet, and then I'm going to click the rename and call this tab Cost of Driving. Yeah, that's what I want to call it. And then enter text to create a calculator like the one below. So we want to duplicate all of this information in our next tab. So notice that when I start doing this, that is hanging over. So I want to go up here and just hover between columns B and C, and then I click and pull to make this column a little wider. Same thing here. Trips per week. And then I can put in the sample inputs. And then I can go in and tell it to create a grid for all of this. And I want these to be shaded in yellow. Now I'm ready for my outputs. So the first output is the cost of gas for one trip, and the second output is the cost of gas for a year, assuming that we do 4 trips a week. So I'm going to just pull this column a little wider so there's room for these 2 inputs. So first of all, we will grid this and grid this, and then shade this green, shade this green. I think we're now ready for the formulas. So the green boxes need to have formulas. Recall that to calculate the cost of gas for one trip, 6.2 miles per trip, 30 miles per gallon, that has to be upside down, and then $4.69 a gallon if that's your current cost of gas. So we want to do 6.2 divided by 30 times $4.69, but really we want to do A5 divided by B5 times C5 equals A5 divided by B5 times C5. Enter. And this is money, so I'm going to click on that cell and then tell it to format as for currency. So the cost of gas for this little trip, that happens to be my commute to work. The cost of gas to commute to work for one day is 97 cents or $1. Now, how much will the gas cost for a year? It's going to be this amount times 4 gets me to a week, and then times 52 will get me to a year. So equals B8 times, I'm not going to say 4 because that could change, I'm going to say D5. I want to reference that cell in case maybe another time it might change to 6 times a week. And then I go times 52. So this is how much I'd spend on gas for a year just for these trips. 4 trips a week, 52 trips a year. And I just skipped over this. If you change the miles traveled to 52 miles, how much does the trip cost? Okay, so let's put in a 52-mile trip here. Wow, I would spend $8 for that trip. And if I do that 4 times a week, that's how much I'd spend for a year. So now you can use the calculator to answer the questions in your computer lab questions.